The other constant conversation of the week still revolves around the Luke Parker-Dylan Shield moment. So we've spoken about it most of the week from the Shield perspective. There have been others who have been talking the Parker perspective. So John Longmire obviously supported his player today. He didn't want any real part of this conversation, but there was just the slight acknowledgement that it had been part of their review.
Luke Parker, in a supposed former teammate, I'm sure you've seen it by now. Get any problem whatsoever with it from Luke's perspective?
We're still talking about it 4 days later, which I'm not sure it deserved that.
Luke Parker is just letting a few of the Essendon boys around him know that they're a bit flighty tonight.
I thought that was the most arrogant, un-Swans-like, nasty behaviour that will come back and bite him. Every time he did it, what are you doing? You're just being juvenile and nasty and a bit of a bully. You don't want to see that sort of stuff creeping into a game from your captain. That's not the Bloods culture. I bet you John Longmire absolutely flinched when he saw that.
From a personal perspective, not something that I probably do too much or make it a habit of, really, but I do understand it's part of the game. I understand there's a mental aspect to the game that goes with the physical aspect.
It's definitely part of the game. I guess you're just trying to pick a crack, and if you can expose that with words or actions, that's what you're trying to do.
What I have is absolute support for Luke Parker, and I think Luke Parker's history suggests he plays the game in the right way. I don't think this is a behaviour that's been repeated too often. We touched on it as part of his game review, but that's only part of a general discussion, and we didn't talk about it for too long at all. He plays the game in the right way, and that's the way he'll continue to play.
There's the narrow and the broad. We're going to have the broad with Eddie and Jordan. Do you think Jordan was a taunter?
Jordan?
He only played for that part of it, didn't he?
He wouldn't even lose one bit of sleep about that. There's been some hysterical responses, and people could say I was hysterical, saying, you know, you'd hurt him. But it's a combative sport, Jared. It's physically combating and it's mentally combative. That's what it is. That's what Australian rules football is. And we have people trying to make the world woke, and I agree with a lot of that, but now we've got people trying to make the game woke. And the AFL is doing their best to protect the game from some serious injuries. But if we start clamping down on the mental disintegration on a combative game when there's 36 players on the ground, you've got to be kidding. You've got to be kidding. John Longmire says, you know, what do you think of John Longmire saying, oh, it's still been going 4 days after?
Had he done his press conference on Monday, it would have been perfectly
relevant. Which he usually does.
Which he usually does. It was always going to be relevant to ask him about it. I think there's a few different layers to this which are really interesting, which you've touched on there, the mental disintegration aspect, what it looked like previously, how it's still in the game.
It has to be in the game.
Probing for a weakness. I didn't have any... It never occurred to me to have an issue with it.
Either did I.
And then she started to hear people, oh, right.
Well, Caroline Wilson said that John Longmire would hate it. John Long wouldn't hate that. I said to you last week, I know people don't like it when the young Richmond fella, was it Dawkins who got Ginnivan? Was it Dawkins?
No, Mansell.
Mansell, sorry. When Mansell got Ginnivan, you know what? The whole world went nuts. Richmond would have said, well done. We're the weak. You'll be right. You've earned your stripes a little bit this week. You still can have that in football. Head high, you got caught, go and sit. Don't do it again, but, you know, well done. You're standing up for your team. You're making a statement. And that still exists in football, Jared.
All right,
it has to.
We'll pick this up.
If Essendon had statements like that, OK, it'd be a different situation. We wouldn't be talking like we have been for the last 3 days.
All right, we'll pick this up. All right, did you only play the footy for the taunting?
Nope.
Were you a taunter?
Yeah, and...
You don't say.
That's the end of the discussion.
Yeah, but it wasn't an easy thing to do. So, and that's why there's been a lot made about this Luke Parker thing. And the way that I would always justify it in my own head was the feeling of losing. Everyone knows what that feeling's like. Horrible feeling. The feeling of... If you got reported for being over-aggressive, if you got publicly shamed... No, shame's not the right word, but what Luke Parker's went through this week, that feeling pales into insignificance when you've got the losing feeling. So every day of the week, you take that sort of aggression on the field.
He might not be even feeling anything.
He might not be.
Would you be feeling anything?
Zero.
And that's what I mean.
No.
Are you unique or are you not unique when you say zero? And how many players are in your basket?
Not many, and it's clearly getting lesser and lesser as we go on, and the demographic and the football changes. But there's not too much else in our game that allows you to be intimidating. The physical stuff is slowly going out of our game. Really, the only way is to verbalise it
And head over the ball.
and head over the ball and that type of stuff. So, hey, if you don't want to be a part of the big boys and the AFL and that type of environment, well, you won't survive for too long.
Well, it just showed. What did he do? He didn't go back with the fly of the ball. He didn't drop his head. And if it was for that tackle, that showed he didn't do anything wrong.
You might be, I'm sort of thinking it was a different incident, but yeah.
But they latched onto it. The point,
Yeah.
who cares what happened? They latched onto it. And he did what he did because he felt he can get into his head.
Well, the thing is, though, like, as forwards, and if someone comes back in their hole and go for a mark and drop it with no one around, we get stuck into them. We say, you heard footsteps, why'd you duck your head for?
Because you're going back with a fly to the ball and you've got a pack of forwards running
well, you've got a big forward coming at you, and if you hesitate or duck your head, that's when we get
That's
stuck
when you
into
turn around and be front and square.
Let's make it a little more personal. Did Hawthorn target Eddie Betts?
Yeah. I reckon one Ben Stratton would have been with Eddie every single game, pinching his arms.
Yeah, there was a lot. He would punch you
and whacking into him.
with the elbows as well, and it hurts, and he kept pinching.
And funnily enough, Stratto was not this type of person, but it was the ability to. You speak about role playing. The ability to play that role, because if you let Eddie run around and not be physical against him, well, he'll absolutely terrorise you. So that was really the only way that Stratto could.
But it worked, though, because when you find out that you're coming up against Stratton, like, you think, oh, here I go, I'm in for like a hard session today. And it wasn't even Stratton, it was Ben Gibson, bloody Josh Gibson, who would hit you as well. Like, everyone in that back line would hit you. You try to run and you're just getting hit from every single direction. I remember one time, me and Adelaide Oval, I went to run, I got hit by someone. I didn't know who it was. I went down, I looked over, Charlie was on the ground over there. So it was a tough.
And that's why they won 3 flags, and you're right, it's a compliment.
Yeah.
Nasty pieces of work, weren't you?
That was good fun.